Hello, and welcome back to Breaking Free, Flying Through the Films of Kenny Ortega. It's been a hot minute since I have been on the air. There have been some technical difficulties, some scheduling challenges, but I'm thrilled to be back here and talking to you all today about the film Xanadu with the lovely Skylar Ross.
Hello.
So Skylar is my roommate and one of my dearest friends. And he is also an aspiring lawyer, and he is a wonderful person who has stopped me from, making any legal snafus in the process of making this podcast. Like, I really wanted to do my own version of the song Breaking Free from High School Musical, and he was like, don't do that. That's illegal. So I didn't. So we thank him for all of his contributions, and also we thank him for watching Xanadu with me to prepare for this episode.
No thanks are needed because I love chaos.
And that is the level that Xanadu lives on. So what I want to do, obviously, we're new. This is a new experience. But what I think makes the most sense is to recap the film, and then we can kind of go back through and think about the pieces of it that really correspond to Kenny. We have a few guiding questions that we can discuss, including a very important and bewildering acronym that Skylar came up with. And then we'll just, we'll sprinkle in a little trivia and we'll have a good time chitter-chattering about Xanadu. So here we are. This is the part of the podcast where we recap the movie. So, Xanadu is a 1980 American musical fantasy film written by Richard Christian Danus and Mark Reed Rubel, and directed by Robert Greenwald. It stars Olivia Newton-John, Michael Beck, and Gene Kelly in his final film role. The film features music by Newton-John, Electric Light Orchestra, Cliff Richard, and The Tubes. So that's the first line of the Wikipedia page. All of those things are true. This is Gene Kelly's last movie, which is a bit of a bummer for him. Although he's actually really great in it. He's definitely the best part of the movie.
Yeah, and he has some great dance sequences and really got to show his stuff for the last time, which is exciting. The reason that we lament this final role is that it exists on a level of chaos that is not worthy of Gene Kelly.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to try and explain what happens in this movie, even though it doesn't make any sense.
Is there a plot? Who's to say?
Who can say? So it starts off with Sonny Malone, who is the Michael Beck character, and he's like a young 70s looking guy. And he's an artist, and he, I guess, wants to be a freelancer, but he has like a corporate job enlarging images from album covers to be used as posters to advertise the albums, right? And so at the beginning we see him sketching. We see his sketching hands, and he's like a very good little artist. But then all of a sudden, I literally don't know what happens, but he's like, he says the iconic first line, "Oh, what the hell? Guys like me shouldn't dream anyway," and tears up the piece he's working on and throws the pieces out the window, and they drift on the wind to this random mural of the 9 muses from Greek mythology. And this is in California. This is Venice Beach, right?
Yeah, so it's in Venice, California, not Venice, Italy, which is, maybe a little disappointing for the muses that are expecting a more luxurious place. But the mural is kind of pretty, and they come to life.
Yeah. And I think so something that I have read in my research is that initially there was a piece where they explained that Sonny painted that mural, but that did not make it into the final cut. So instead, it's just incredibly confusing, just like everything else in the film.
Random mural, random pieces of paper, they get torn up, a random muses coming to life.
Mm-hmm. They come to life. They're outlined in neon, which is amazing. They do a number called "I'm Alive," which is great because the soundtrack is truly excellent. And the leader of the muses is Clio, played by Olivia Newton-John. And she like turns into a human woman and she's on roller skates. She's roller skating down the boardwalk and she runs into Sunny and she kisses him and then she skates away because she is a manic pixie dream girl. And that's how this movie begins. And then Sunny, I guess, decides to go to work that day, even though it seems like he didn't want to go to work. Like all the other artists at his job are like, Sunny, you're here. What a surprise. But he shows up at work and it turns out that his assignment for the day is to enlarge this this album cover. And who should be on this album cover but Miss Olivia Newton-John. And so he's like, oh, snap. I need to find this woman. Bye, other artists. I'm not going to do my job today after all. I'm going to ask my boss and the photographer, da-da-da. And finally, like, no one knows who this woman is. Finally, he goes back to the beach. And who does he find on the beach but Mr. Gene Kelly, who is playing his oboe on the beach, as you do. And yeah, he and Gene Kelly hit it off, I guess, because he's like, Gene Kelly, I'm looking for this mysterious woman. And I think Gene Kelly is probably like, oh, yes, I too had a mysterious experience with a mysterious woman. And they like become buddies, and Gene Kelly like invites him back to his giant mansion and plays him some music from when Gene Kelly's character used to be in a band in like the 40s. He used to have a jazz club, and there was like a singing partner that he sung with who coincidentally looks a lot like Olivia Newton-John. And again, there's a number and it's great. It's like a flashback sequence where Gene Kelly and Olivia Newton-John dance together, and it's really cute. It's a bit we'll talk about it more. I won't editorialize just yet, but it's like the number itself is good and all the stuff surrounding it is like, what? And then, yes, then more things happen. Sunny finally meets Olivia Newton-John's character. She is continuing to be mysterious. She starts to fall in love with him. They start to fall in love. And also Sunny and Gene Kelly's character, whose name is Danny, they decide to become business partners. Why? I don't know. I think the textual reason is that Sunny has like an artist's eye, and because Gene Kelly is a real estate guy, he's like, I appreciate an artist's eye. But really, I think it's just like we both fell in love with a girl once, and also we're both white dudes. So good for Sunny. So then I don't know. I guess Gene Kelly like gets it in his head that it's time to start a new club. And so he's like, Sunny, have you seen any buildings that might be good buildings for me to start a new club? And Sunny remembers that while he was looking for this girl, he found this building, this abandoned building. Like, I don't even know where it is. I don't know. I'm like, is it near the beach? I have no idea. He finds this abandoned building, and Gene Kelly is like, this could be the place for my club. Yeah, let's do it, Sunny. And there is another number that's also good where Sunny is like, no, Gene Kelly, I guess, is like, I want to have another jazz club, just like in the 40s. And Sunny is like, but what if it was a rock and roll club like in the 80s? And then they have like a counterpoint number, which is very exciting. We do love counterpoint here in the beautiful land of breaking free. And then how does the roller disco even happen?
Well, so that's the funny thing. Like, I don't even know at which point in the movie I realized that they were opening a roller disco. Like, it was like maybe in the last like 20 minutes of this like 90 or 100-minute film that I realized, oh wait, they're like literally opening a roller disco. It never comes up.
I mean, like, Sunny is often roller skating. Kira is always roller skating. But yeah, I don't know if they ever say like, it's going to be a roller disco, or like, does the text? I don't even know. But yes, so they're like, we're going to do it. We're going to have this roller disco. Will it be like the 80s? Will it be like the 40s? Who knows? But there are going to be roller skates. And that's essentially the plot. They do that without much trouble. They do have a shopping montage to find outfits for the roller disco opening party. But the actual conflict, I guess, is that Kira and Sunny fall in love. And that is apparently bad. Not because there's been anything in the text that told us that falling in love was not allowed or anything, but just because I don't know, Kira like becomes distant, and then she's like, Sunny, I have to go away. Like, I never meant to fall in love with you. I was just meant to like achieve your artistic dreams or whatever. The artistic dreams of opening a roller disco. And then she like runs away. She's like, I have to go back to, I don't know, the liminal muse space. And then there's a powerful scene where Sunny goes and finds her, and he's like, I gotta find her. Oh, there's an excellent line, another excellent line where he talks to Gene Kelly's character, and he's like, Gene Kelly, what do I do? She's gone. And Gene Kelly is like, well, listen, son, like, if she got here, there has to be a way for you to get there.
Oh, right. And that's when Sunny straps on his roller skates. And what does he do? He goes crashing headfirst into the Muse mural on Venice Beach.
And it works. He gets transported into the liminal space where Olivia Newton-John just kind of is, like, by herself. But apparently Zeus is there as a voiceover voice. And maybe Hera, like, definitely Zeus's wife, who would be Hera. And like Olivia's like, Sunny, you can't be here. And he's like, I had to come and get you. Like, I can't let you stay. And she's like, but you can't stay. It's just, there's no explanation of anything that's happening here. Like, there's no reason why he can't stay or why she can't stay in the real world or anything. It's very confusing. And finally, he's like, come back with me. And she's like, I can't. And Zeus is like, no. And so Sunny gets like spirited with very wonderful 80s special effects back to the earth, I guess. And Olivia Newton-John sings Suspended in Time, which is great, while surrounded in like a neon glow. She's like surrounded in a neon glow, and it just like slowly zooms in on her over the course of the song. But it's great. It's a great number. The numbers are great. And finally, Zeus and Hera, I guess, relent, and they're like, we'll let those crazy kids be together after all. And then the roller disco opens, right? Or is that what
yeah.
you
Yeah.
Then
the
the
roller disco opens.
And Sunny's like sad because he's like, oh, I wish Olivia Newton-John was here. And then who should appear but a beautiful cocktail waitress who looks just like Olivia Newton-John. and she roller skates some, and she sings some, and she literally just like kind of does an Olivia Newton-John concert, or she sings a bunch of your favorite Olivia Newton-John songs, and then she and Sunny finally talk to each other. Oh, and she also sings the song Xanadu, which is great. And then, yes, she and Sunny finally talk to each other, and they're like, oh, like, hey, do I know you from somewhere? And she goes, oh, I don't know. And the final line of the film is Sunny saying, I just wanted to talk to you. And then, like, the credits roll over these two little cuties having their first, quote unquote, first conversation. And that's the movie.
You might be thinking to yourself at this point, 14 or so minutes into this podcast, that you have no idea what happened. Mm-hmm. And we really did our best with this because we don't know that much either. Mm-hmm.
It just really, it does not make much sense at all, actually. But you know what? That's kind of charming. Like, there's something very adorable about how bewildering it is. Like, it really just feels like the kind of like they gestured at the idea of a plot more so than they really had something that they needed spiritually or wanted to make, or a message that they wanted to give.
This is almost certainly a stretch, but it feels in some sense like they were going after impressionism to the extent that there was an intention behind it. They left the impression of feeling, even though nothing coherent happened.
So I guess some like little historical nuggets from my research after watching this film and being like, how did this happen? It kind of sounds like the filmmakers, someone in this filmmaking experience was trying to capitalize on the short-lived roller disco movie trend. This is an actual genre of films featuring such other favorites as Roller Boogie and Skate Town, USA. And so, yeah, so it's like, I guess in like the years maybe 1978 to 1980, there were a number of roller disco movies coming out. So like with that in mind, it makes a little bit more sense how and why Xanadu exists. And Skate Town, USA was actually Patrick Swayze's first film role. And we'll be talking about Patrick a little bit later because he's in Dirty Dancing, which was also choreographed by Mr. Kenny Ortega. So, like, I guess there is something to be said for the roller disco movie genre. But I think where these other two movies, from what I could tell about these other two movies, is that they are like within the text, they're basically just about like girl meets boy and they enter a roller disco dance competition. And like that's a pretty digestible plot. But when you get into the sort of fantasy thing, on top of the roller disco thing, it gets a little complicated. And so what it kind of feels like from, again, sort of my poking around is like they wanted to capitalize on this roller disco trend and somehow it became a musical, which is great. And Electric Light Orchestra is attached to it and Electric Light Orchestra is great. And then it kind of sounds like basically more and more people started signing on that kind of, I guess, sort of started to like lend it this air of legitimacy. And then they were like, oh snap, wait, I guess we have to maybe generate a plot for this somehow. And it didn't really work out. So like when, for example, Olivia Newton-John signed on and she was like, this is going to be my follow-up to Grease. Or when Gene Kelly signs on and he thinks this is going to be like the movie musical, my return to the movie musical genre to kind of like send me off as my final piece and like whatever, start up a new generation of movie musicals. You know, you can feel like where people thought it was going to go and compared to where it actually is a bit of a bummer.
You get the sense that they were trying to make it like something for everyone, except for maybe Michael Beck, who we have no idea what he wanted out of this experience. But, you know, the others, they definitely wanted something out of this experience. And then it sort of became maybe nothing as a result.
Right. That said, it's very fun.
Yeah,
it's very fun to watch.
We had a great time that night.
I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it, and I think that you should watch it. I think that we should all watch it. We'll talk about this a little bit more later about like this cult appeal. But apparently, this movie made almost nothing in the box office, but started to really make a lot of money. Well, I mean, not a lot. I think it was a $20 million budget and it grossed like $23 million in box office / VHS sales. So like after it was released on VHS, it became, you know, that much more powerful. So I do kind of want to talk about like where it fits into the cult classic world. But first, I want to look at our guiding questions. I think it's time to talk about our guiding questions for this podcast. So Skylar brilliantly, as I was talking about, like, here are the common threads that I want to look for in the films. Skylar came up with a great mnemonic device because he is incredibly powerful. And so the mnemonic device is Cupid, which is spelled Cupwhd. Here are what these things stand for. The C is for chemistry. Like I've noticed in the Kenny films that I'm familiar with, there's a great sense of chemistry. And like when he is able to cast a film, I think that the chemistry really pops off. Like sparks fly. You can see it. I'm talking about Troy and Gabriella, but I'm sure there are other people too. But I'm mostly talking about Troy and Gabriella. In High School Musical, for those not in the know. The U in Cupid stands for utopia, which is actually perfect for Xanadu, because Xanadu is essentially a synonym for utopia. But again, something else I've noticed in Kenny's work is this sense of joy and light and like equality and connection that kind of flies through these pieces. And so I want to talk about any moments of utopia that we experienced while watching Xanadu. The P is for prop work, because I noticed that Kenny loves a blank number. In High School Musical, it's a basketball number, or a we're at the pool number, or the junkyard number in High School Musical 3. But anyway, in short, prop work. P is for prop work. W is for, what was iconic about this? That should probably be the first thing, but we're not going to rework the mnemonic device because it's already perfect. H is for the historical moment. What was going on in history at the time of this film's release, and how does the film relate to it? I guess we kind of already got at that with the roller disco thing. Maybe we'll see if there's more. And then the D is for datedness or timelessness. Again, I feel like certain Kenny things are very powerful because they are timeless, and others are very powerful because they are so of their own time. So we will get into Cupid, but first, a word from our sponsors. So, with Cupid in mind, what do we think about the chemistry in this film? I think that, I don't know, I think that just the writing didn't really leave a lot of room for any real chemistry to develop.
Well, I think I 100% agree. The best chemistry we saw in the movie was between Olivia Newton-John and Gene Kelly during their dance number. And that's Kenny. That's the choreography that really sang in a way. We were able to see them together performing as a unit in order to sort of evoke something dramatic. And since the dialogue left nothing dramatic to be had, it really, the movement in that scene in particular, it was, I think, the high point of the chemistry in the film.
It is. It's really, really sweet. It's really wholesome. And actually, yeah, those two seem like a really lovely pair. And truly, Gene Kelly is a charisma machine, right? Like, I don't know. There's just something about him that takes these lines that were written by people who have never heard other human beings talk before and makes them feel really like human and charming, like legitimately charming. Again, like some other, challenges that I think a lesser actor would have crumbled under were like, there was, in the first scene, like before this great number with Olivia, they have like this really long shot of him just listening to the music that his old band was playing. And like, it was a little bit uncomfortable, but it would have been even more uncomfortable if it were not being performed by Gene Kelly. I think he's really powerful. Sorry, Michael Beck, but this was not really your moment, I don't think. I mean, I guess I believed there was just not anything textually about Michael's character and Olivia's character that made me really believe that they had any good reason to be in love, except they were like both young and cute, and that's what happens in movies.
Well, I think part of the problem too is that because of the dramatic positioning of Olivia Newton-John's character as Kira, she was like introduced as both the potential love interest for Michael Beck's character, Sonny Malone, as well as for Gene Kelly's character, because her muse character was also the figure who was his inspiration in the 40s. And so dramatically, like there was sort of a tension there too about which one was she supposed to be with, and who is her character supposed to be playing off of.
And yeah, and I guess it is sort of a challenge moment where she does feel more connected to Gene Kelly, but she kind of like has to be paired up with Michael Beck because optics, which I don't disagree with, because the optics would not have been great if she had like ended up with Gene Kelly. But there does seem to be like a genuine connection between them that was really like sweet. Ultimately, it was more like I think it was more like a friendly chemistry, but like very lovely to watch. Okay, so that's the C. The U is for utopia. And I actually think there was a lot of utopia in this film. Obviously, Xanadu means utopia, or like Xanadu is like the pleasure palace of Kublai Khan in the Samuel Coleridge poem. And I do feel like Xanadu and utopia are ideas that belong together. I feel like there are a lot of, I don't know, like something I've noticed in Kenny World is that we get like very, even in the 80s, like very diverse ensembles, very like interesting visuals of people like connecting across, I don't know, across demographics and things like that. So like in this number, which is called Dancin', this is the number where Gene Kelly and Michael Beck are both imagining what this club is going to be like. And Gene Kelly's imagining a jazz club, and there's like a jazz big band number. And then Michael Beck's character is imagining like an 80s or 70s, I guess, since this comes out in 1980, like a late 70s, like metal rock band sort of scene. And so it's kind of like the 40s group sings, the 70s group sings, and then they kind of like combine, they cross over, which is like pretty cool and pretty exciting. And like to see how their dance styles sort of impact each other is really enjoyable to watch as well. And also just like what a fun and inventive musical moment. I will say the number is a little long, kind of a lot long. Like each group gets like 2 verses and 2 choruses, and that's too long. Side note, as an actress who has worked on a lot of new work, I'll just say, for anyone who's listening, who's writing a musical, consider cutting your second verses of songs. If your show is too long, the second verse is maybe not doing as much for you as you think it is. Pro tip. But yeah, I felt like that was a really inventive moment. Like the dance styles were so fun and interesting when they were different. And then when they came together, it was even more fun and even more exciting. I highly recommend, again, that you know, if nothing else, watch all of the numbers from this movie. Like, look them up on YouTube.
I agree with that. And the numbers really do an excellent job of showcasing, like, the highlights of the movie and the really wonderful things about it, while maybe, like, letting you skip some of the drudgery of the plot or lack thereof.
Right. The book. Yeah. Yeah. Like, truly, the plot doesn't matter, especially.
Which sort of leads me to the point that I was going to make about Utopia, which is that like the most notable conflict in this film, as we said earlier, was about like Kira and Sunny having to convince Zeus and Hera that they are in love and that they should be together, at least for a moment, if not forever. And that's a reflection of the utopian nature of the piece, because there just are no conflicts in this piece. The fact that Gene Kelly's character and Sunny Malone have very different visions for what this product that they're going to work on together is going to be, but then there's no actual scene where they come to blows about that is shocking to me.
You're so right.
And this number Dancin' is like the perfect reflection of that. We see on screen the two different visions juxtaposed together, but then we never actually address the fact that there are competing visions, because somehow inevitably it becomes a roller disco.
Obviously, the thing that combines the 1940s with the 1980s is a roller disco.
Naturally.
You're right. In like any other movie, that would have been a source of conflict. But in Xanadu, it's just like, it's time for counterpoint. And honestly, I feel like we can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, totally.
As a society.
The secret is we all just need to learn how to roller skate.
Yeah, that'll solve everything. Okay, so that's that's Utopia, baby. Okay, so now let us discuss P for prop work. And I would say there were a lot of numbers. I would say in this film that the main prop is roller skates, which is actually kind of I think a source of challenge. I think roller skating is something that is very hard to capture on film well. A lot of the framing of the film was kind of hard to follow. Like, you didn't really know where you were supposed to look. There were a lot of like things happening in the background behind the main image that you were supposed to be looking at, which I think was probably not the best move. And also a lot of like, I don't know, certain things definitely felt like they were designed for the stage, or like choreographed for the stage, and then so you ended up with just like some wide shots that didn't really take advantage of like what film can do compared to stage choreography.
There also weren't really levels, right? Yeah. And you wanted there to be like levels in how you were, as a viewer, seeing these people on roller skates in order to really capture the motion that they're experiencing. But instead, the camera would sort of just stay at one level for an entire scene, which was rather limiting and stifling when you consider that, you know, roller skates are inherently dynamic. And the point is that they're supposed to be zipping around, maybe.
And I also feel kind of like it might have been, and you know, again, there are so many levels to this, but it might have been wise for Xanadu, if it could go back, to I mean, honestly, either cut the skates or go ahead and cast people who were really good skaters in the movie, because, you know, most of these numbers are not being performed on screen, so it doesn't matter how good of a singer these people that you see on screen are. From the clips that I've seen of, for example, Skate Town USA and Roller Boogie, it looks like those movies really put an emphasis on getting really great skaters on screen. Even Patrick Swayze was like a very good roller skater when he was cast in this movie. So I do think like that is something that is my constructive feedback for for the prop work element of the film. However, there were a lot of really fun numbers. The 40s 80s number, which I think is really great, that was very fun. They both had like bands on stage or on the screen, which was very cool. Fun fact, side note, one of the bands was this band called The Tubes. The 80s rock band was The Tubes. And Kenny actually goes way back with The Tubes. They like hired him to be one of their artistic directors. They were kind of a performance arty rock band in the 70s, and so he like toured around the world with them for 10 years before working on this movie. So I wasn't able to figure out whether it was like the Tubes signed on and brought Kenny with them, or Kenny signed on and brought the Tubes with him, but I feel like they were probably a package deal, which is very delightful to me. Another number that I think is absolutely worth a watch is All Over the World, which is the shopping montage. We love a shopping montage.
That we do.
Or at least I love a shopping montage. And it's like Olivia Newton-John and Michael Beck help Gene Kelly find an outfit for the roller disco opening. And they go shopping, and they're just like, I don't know, maybe they're supposed to be mannequins that came to life or something, but there are a lot of people at the store.
Yeah.
I think they are mannequins that come to life, actually.
Definitely.
Because in the opening of that sequence, you see like people standing in the windows of the store, and then they all like turn and look at Gene Kelly and co as they walk in. So it must be that they're living mannequins, which is a little bit scary.
You definitely get Evening Primrose vibes.
Yes. And that's art. But it's kind of great. It's kind of great too. Like, it's very fun to see Gene Kelly try on a bunch of outfits, and it's fun to see them all like dancing on clothing racks and like wheeling stuff around and climbing stuff and coming out of dressing rooms in like a kick line. It's very fun. It's very, very fun. Yeah, Kenny knows how to use a scene.
A lot of props in that number.
Lots of props in that number. On a scale of 1 to 10, that number definitely had the most props, which is good. And then at the end, they just have like a big group roller skating number, which is like fine. I don't know. Again, I think it would have been more exciting to have like 1 or 2 featured really good roller skaters rather than like a bunch of okay roller skaters.
Agreed.
And actually it did kind of feel like there were some Zoot Suit people in the final scene too. And so I do think they were trying to get at this like 40s meets 80s thing. But again, it would have been nice to have like a little more text or something to support that.
Like any explanations for anything at any point in the movie would have been really helpful as a viewer. That's all I'm saying.
You are not wrong. Okay, then W. The W is for what was iconic about this film. And what was iconic that Kenny did, and what was iconic in general. I keep coming back to that 40s and 80s number. I think that is iconic. And I also think that Suspended in Time is iconic, even though I don't think that's Kenny's doing.
Agreed. It's funny. I can't like put my finger on what I loved about that scene, but the song has really stuck with me for the past couple of weeks since we watched it. It's a really lovely melody, and it's a very sincere moment in a piece that was sort of devoid of all sincerity throughout.
Or like it's sincere, but you don't know what it's being sincere about. And in that moment, you're like, okay, she's singing about lost love. I can like latch onto this and understand what's going on. Yeah, it's really good. And I guess this is a great moment to say, truly, musically, this film is incredible. It's like off the charts. I think Electric Light Orchestra and Olivia Newton-John both have like really interesting melodies. It's really like rangy, it's really singable, or well actually it's kind of like challenging to sing along to, like, because it's so rangy. It's kind of a difficult sing, like not everyone can sing these songs, but that's very fun and enjoyable too. It's very interesting to listen to, interesting like accidentals or unexpected chords. I am by no means a real music theory buff, but I definitely think that someone better at music theory would agree with me that these are musically interesting songs. You wouldn't, I don't know, I think they make you pay attention. They are worth listening to. The songs really truly do hold up. It's kind of an awesome time capsule for that period in music.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely think the songs are one of the more iconic aspects of it, right?
Yeah, like totally.
We've throughout the past 40 minutes of this podcast have been emphasizing how little plot there is and how we really can't make sense of anything that actually took place. But the songs have really stuck with us. And I think you're right. They do capture that period of time in popular music. And we're going to get to this, I guess, when we get to the H, so maybe this is some foreshadowing. But, we're post-disco, but, still early 80s. And so it's a very transitory period of music history. There's something that's maybe a little ephemeral about those particular sounds that you hear on this soundtrack.
Definitely. Yeah, because it's neither full-on disco nor full-on 80s synth. It's a very special moment. And I also think that one of my pet rants is about how music right now it can be very like whispery and monotone. And so it's very exciting to me to hear songs that are like full of feeling and really like the melodies really travel, and the instrumentation is really fun and exciting and kind of carries you along musically. So I think that's really great. Something else iconic is Don't Walk Away, which is the part where they turn into cartoon characters. There is a Don Bluth animated sequence just hanging out in Xanadu, which I think is another example of the trying to give somebody a reason to be involved with this piece. Don Bluth's reason to be involved with this piece is that he got to animate a really delightful number that would have been cool if there had been literally any precedent at all for the fact that these characters were gonna turn into cartoons.
Yeah, it's definitely when it happened, it was one of those moments where you realize, oh, there just are no rules in the world of Xanadu. It's just like the filmmakers did not establish anything up front that was going to be like a continuous rule throughout the entire piece. And at this moment, they introduced animation as a random blip. It never came up again, never was foreshadowed. It just happened.
Yeah.
And we had to move on as an audience.
Yeah, we
and
did.
There's something beautiful about that.
There really is. Again, look it up. It's delightful. But it doesn't make any sense. Something else iconic would be the Olivia Newton-John, Gene Kelly duet, which is like the 40s dance number, like totally 40s dance number. It's really sweet. And this is another great opportunity to drop in some of my trivia. So apparently Gene Kelly signed on to this movie with the thought of, trying to bring back the movie musical. And apparently in his initial agreement, he was not going to dance in the movie. But he did want to have kind of approval on who was choreographing. And he met up with Kenny. And Kenny kind of showed him like, well, here's what I was sort of thinking for this number. Kenny having grown up on these musical movies starring Gene Kelly. And once they started kind of, going back and forth, Kenny was like, oh, what if it was something like this? Sort of like in, I don't know, Singing in the Rain. And Jeannie was like, no, it's a little bit more like this. And then, they started hitting it off and became, I guess, kind of buds. And one of the things that Gene did was also kind of started to teach Kenny how to choreograph for film, because of course Kenny comes from a stage background, as I think most people do. More stages than movies in general. And so Gene was kind of the person who started to teach him to choreograph for film. And I would say that like this is definitely a bit of a baby picture in that regard. Kind of like how, West Side Story is Stephen Sondheim's baby pictures. But when you get up to the more current Kenny stuff, he's the king of choreographing for film.
Yeah, and I definitely think that the with regard to the choreography in particular, it's tough in this film because it's a roller skate movie and they spend so much time on roller skates that there's only so much he can do in this movie to begin with. So the stuff that he did do, such as the Olivia Newton-John Gene Kelly 40s number, is really excellent work.
Yeah.
And really, really impressive.
Yeah. We should also say, and this is sort of niche as well. There was another choreographer whose name was Jerry Trent, who we haven't heard a lot about, but apparently he spent most of his time working with Olivia Newton-John and like teaching her how to tap for the movie for the Gene Kelly number. And he also, he later moved to working on Foley, being like a Foley artist and doing sound in movies. And I guess his wife and his son also do Foley, which I think is really nice. I like discovered an interview with him and it was very interesting, but it does kind of sound like that sort of reinforced this idea of like, we thought it was going to be one thing and then more and more people came on and it kind of became nothing. But it's, I don't know, it's really special. I think the numbers are the most iconic part of the movie for sure. And then this historical moment, right? Late 70s, early 80s, Ronald Reagan campaign.
Well, it's interesting. So we're like, after disco sucks. So disco as a music genre is not like the popular music anymore. Studio 54 is over. People literally burned their disco albums on like a football field or something. And then like, what do? We have to like find something to fill the pop culture void. And so you end up with really interesting disco influenced music that couldn't call itself disco. And so it ends up becoming a really interesting hybrid between these disco infused elements and like, as you said earlier, Zena, like 80s synth.
Yeah. I think Yellow really goes ham in terms of synth. And yes, again, as I sort of already blabbered about, just really musically interesting stuff within this strange little film. Culturally, I would say the common thread between the 70s and 80s is like, as a, as an amateur culture observer, is just like doing a lot. And everyone was in fact doing a lot at every point in this movie. Visually, a lot was happening. Costumes wise, lots of like spandex, neon, bell bottoms, like kind of your favorite 70s tropes and many of your favorite 80s tropes were all hanging out in this movie. It did feel like some certain very 80s aesthetics were, I don't know, maybe appearing for the first time in this movie. It was very exciting. Oh, there are also a lot of little shorty shorts. Lots of shorty shorts for men, which I think is good. I think that the people deserve little shorty shorts.
They're making a comeback, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think going off of the neon thing, the special effects were sort of maybe a foreshadowing to some of what we would get later down the line. The outlines of figures in neon is pretty iconic, I think.
Yeah.
And
they definitely tried a lot of things in terms of special effects.
Oh,
Many
totally.
of the transitions between scenes were very special.
Oh, they look like they're straight out of Microsoft PowerPoint. It's like shocking.
Truly. And just... yeah, and yeah, the neon things are like some, I don't know, when they're in like the liminal space with the gods, there's some, I don't know, some very, I think, noble attempts at using these special effects in a way that serves what story there is.
And it's early computing power, right? Like this is like at the beginning of when cinema was able to use computers for special effects. And so it's easy to make fun of these Microsoft PowerPoint looking scene transitions. But for that time, that was actually probably somewhat advanced.
And then that actually brings us to the D in Cupid, which is dated. Is it dated? Is it timeless? What do we think? I think it's pretty dated.
Oh my God, it's so dated.
It feels very of its time. But the time capsule quality is really fun.
After we watched it and as Zena was researching and discovered Skate Town, USA and these other roller disco movies, it really gave me a sense of like, oh, this actually was a cultural phenomenon, a minor one, but it happened.
Yeah.
And like, who knew? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I go to roller discos and I didn't know. So, here we are.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like it captures a very small slice of history.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder what would be like the equivalent mini cultural phenomenon. I don't even know. I'm like vampires? No, but the vampires had some staying power, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe it's dubstep. I feel like dubstep is something that existed for like 2 years and then kind of disappeared.
Maybe. But I feel like there isn't like the same kind of thing where it's like, oh, there is a cultural activity that you can go do, right? Like you can go to a roller rink and experience. Remember going places before the pandemic times? No, but they're like what's interesting about this roller disco movie phenomenon is that like there was a way that you could take what you were seeing in the cinema out into your personal life by going to a roller disco, either with friends or on a date or something.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything that's quite equivalent today where we can see represented on screen or in media something that we then do in our day-to-day lives socially.
It doesn't really feel like there's any like one activity that is like the activity for people to be doing. So that's kind of exciting to see a tribute to that on screen. I think that it's such a funny place for Kenny's film career to start as we're kind of, winding down our discussion of this movie, because you wouldn't think, or I don't know, I wouldn't watch a movie like this if I didn't know where Kenny ended up. I would maybe think like, ha ha ha, what a weird little flash in the pan. Nothing about this will ever lead to anything.
In fact, it in some senses like ended people's careers. Like Gene Kelly, this was his last movie.
His last movie, and I don't. Yeah, and it is not a wonderful movie, but it is a movie that gives a sense of wonder. And I guess, some other things that I did not include in Cupid, so I may need to amend Cupid. I may need to add a T. Cupid might have to be the thing, because something else I am trying to track and keep an eye on is technique, like the dance technique. Something I've noticed in my viewing of Kenny films is that there's a great appreciation for like proper technique. There's always a little something, like even in a contemporary piece, there's always a little something that is straight up ballet, or straight up like beautiful partnering. And there's some really wonderful partnering in this movie. There was like a pair of ensemblists that were doing a lot. An incredibly flexible woman and her male dance partner. They were incredible. You'll see them if you look up these numbers. You'll know when you see it. And gosh, and then like in the Muses number at the very beginning, that was like totally ballet influenced. Like there was, I don't know. Yeah, I would call it ballet, like maybe a little contemporary dance, but definitely very technique heavy. Lots of beautiful fan kicks, lots of beautiful, oh gosh, I wrote it down. Yeah, fan kicks. My notes are truly, my notes are incomprehensible because the movie was incomprehensible. But yes, I see lots of fan kicks. Lots of body rolls, which is not really technique, but it is a vibe.
It requires the ability to move in an interesting way that like I personally am not capable of. So I'm impressed.
Yeah, isolations, tip walks. No, I don't know. I just think that there are many things to kind of keep an eye out for. Like I think as I keep watching these movies, and as I think about what the common threads are, this appreciation for like real dance skill is always kind of an undercurrent, which is exciting to me coming from the world of the theater. I do appreciate dance, even though I should not do it. So I guess something else that's kind of a Xanadu silver lining as we are, again, winding down, nearing an hour of conversation, is that there was a musical version of Xanadu that was released in May 2007. It started previewing. And the musical is actually my first exposure to Xanadu. I saw the musical in a black box theater in my hometown, and it was so funny. I think the black box was a very important part of it because the space was so small, and yet they still put everybody on roller skates for that finale. And it was too funny. And so the musical basically exists to make fun of the movie, which I think is pretty perfect, actually. And the musical has more plot than the movie does.
Yeah, they rewrote the book in pretty substantial aspects, is my understanding.
Yeah, they had Sunny draw the mural, and they added some evil Muse sisters who are trying to prevent them from making the roller disco. And they like set up the idea that she can't fall in love at the beginning, so that when she does fall in love, you understand that that's bad.
In other words, they established stakes.
Yes.
And the film does not have any stakes.
No. Definitely not. And now for some discussion about why Xanadu feels maybe like less of a cult classic than some other popular films, which was recorded a bit after this original session because we forgot to talk about it then. So, apologies for that, and for the change in audio quality. These are the podcast growing pains, but bear with me. Here we go. So here we are, we're punching in to discuss why Xanadu is not as well known or as culty as something like, say, Rocky Horror. So what do you think?
I think it's a really tough question, right? So Rocky Horror and Xanadu are both similar in that they're about nothing. They're nonsense. But I think Rocky Horror does something that Xanadu doesn't, which is that it really plays up the camp element of the film. So, for example, in Rocky Horror, you have plenty of sex and fishnets and outrageous costumes and amazing gyrations. And I don't know that Xanadu quite approaches that level of camp such that it would attract the cult following.
Yeah, I think you're right. Or there are fishnets and there are gyrations, but ultimately the plot is incredibly chaste. It is very it's kind of sexless, right? They're just
Yeah.
in love because they have to be in love because they're two young people of different genders who are in a movie together. It's not like there's really any spark. Right?
Totally, totally. And I think, something like a Rocky Horror, if that's the example we're referencing, it enables audience participation in a very different way than Xanadu. What are you going to do at a midnight screening of Xanadu? Throw on roller skates and leg warmers and go around the Venice Pier? I don't know.
Ideally, yes. I would absolutely do that, yes. But I think I also, actually thinking about that too, I think another thing that makes it maybe feel less iconic or less interactable is the fact that the songs are not being performed on screen. Because, right, with Rocky Horror, you get the shadow casts and all of that good stuff. But in Xanadu, it's just I don't know, there's not really a ton in terms of there is dancing and there is skating in circles, but I don't know, it's not as immersive in terms of if a person were to do a shadow cast of it, what would they would have to sing or they would have to bring even more of their own work to it.
Yeah, which maybe also goes to the nature of music in each film. So in Rocky Horror, the characters themselves are singing, and so when you as an audience member are experiencing it or maybe reperforming it at a midnight screening or something, you are thereby embodying the character. You're taking on a different persona, whereas Xanadu, the songs aren't always part of the story itself. It's not a musical in the same sense.
Right. And so you would have to create that element or something. It is very funny. It is Xanadu is in many ways a play with music.
It is. It's something like a Peter and the Starcatcher.
Yeah.
Which is very silly to say, but formally that does seem to be what it resembles.
It's just, it's very interesting. And coming from musical theater world, it is kind of a strange experience to watch a musical object that's just not quite it. And then I just think that while it is iconic in many ways, it's just not quite over the top or out there enough to really capture the imagination. I mean, it captures my imagination because I love chaos. And I love this specific brand of but what is this about? I also feel Rocky Horror is about nothing, but it does a good job of pretending to be about something.
Totally.
And Xanadu does not do a good job of pretending to be about something.
Agreed. And I also think, broadening the conversation from Rocky Horror more generally to cult classics, right? The thing about cult classics is that there are so many inside jokes to the film. And I don't know what within Xanadu would lend itself to being the butt of a joke such that a community could form around it.
Right. And I guess that's kind of where the stage show really shines, is that the stage show figured it out. So maybe we need to sit tight and wait for them to make a movie of the stage show so that we can truly experience the power of Xanadu.
That could be a lot of fun. I have no idea what that would look like, but boy, would I love to see it on the big screen.
It would be a mess, an absolute mess. And now back to your regular programming. Oh, and I'll also say about Xanadu, something, again, the legacy of Xanadu, what it has left us with is the Razzies. The first Golden Raspberries were inspired by Xanadu, the movie, which is really exciting. Robert Greenwald won the Golden Raspberry for Worst Director. And it also got a lot of other a lot of other nominations for Razzies. So Xanadu has actually given us a lot. I remain convinced that Olivia Newton-John's character in this was the OG Manic Pixie Dream Girl. It gave us a soundtrack, and most importantly, it gave us Kenny.
It did give us Kenny. Mm-hmm. I mean, I definitely had a moment afterwards where I thought to myself, gosh, like, you know, Kenny Ortega could definitely write notes on camp, but Susan Sontag could not have made Xanadu.
And with that, lovely listeners, we come to the end of episode 1 of Breaking Free, Flying Through the Films of Kenny Ortega. I hope you enjoyed your listen today, and I hope that you will send me a little note on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or even an email. I am breakingfreepod on all platforms and breakingfreepod@gmail.com. I welcome emails. I welcome constructive criticism. And if you have any thoughts or feelings about any of the movies that we're watching, please send them my way. I would love to hear them. I'm also going to try and keep those platforms going so that you can see some of the clips that we're talking about. If you don't feel like sitting down and watching the whole movie, I'm going to try and make it easy for you to really understand the lawless ways of Xanadu. So if you enjoyed this and would like to support the podcast further, of course you can do so by following, but if you'd like to support it monetarily, you can do so if you have an anchor.fm account, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Xena and send me a couple of dollars. If you wish, no pressure. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss out on the next episode, which will be about a film called One from the Heart, which I have never seen before. Thank you so much for your time today. And don't forget, we're all in this together.